Hello. Oh my God, this is still so weird. I'm talking to myself, which I normally do, but I'm like trying to look in the camera and making sure I'm looking presentable at the same time. But hey, this is Michael with the Unmasked Self podcast. And now that I think about it, I feel like I should have a little intro or something, but I might be doing too much. I don't know. We'll see. We're figuring it out as we go. This is really just a space to kind of talk through a lot of things, neurodivergence and mental health. And I want to really dissect a couple things too, because that's something that I love to do. So in this particular episode, I really went back and forth on this because the previous episode was really about introducing what this podcast is, what it stands for, why I'm doing it. And I really just want to touch on the experience of learning more about yourself, whether that be if you are autistic, if you have ADHD, if you have any sort of neurodivergence. And let's just break down what neurodivergence means, because I am someone who is super big in truly speaking the same language and understanding things so that we are all on the same page. Because this was really surprising for me because I think so black and white, but language is very fluid. And I know most people are probably going to be like, well, duh, what does that mean? But what I mean is I could literally be telling you in my mind something that I think is black and white, and someone else can receive it an entirely different way because it's a different experience, it's a different perception, all of that. So I always like to go off of the textbook definition so that we can get on the same page, so that we're speaking the same language. And it avoids confusion, I feel like, for the most part. So the textbook definition of what neurodivergence is differing in mental or neurological function from what is considered typical or normal, frequently used with reference to autistic spectrum disorders, ADHD, not neurotypical. So it's essentially just a difference in mental or neurological function. So what that means is that someone who is neurodivergent falls into a category with autism, with ADHD, with OCD. There's so many different ones there. And it's just a different way that your brain processes information. And so with that being said, let's go into neurotypical, because these are two words that I use quite often. Neurotypical means not displaying or characterized by other neurological atypical patterns of thought or behaviors. So essentially, someone who is considered more, I hate using this word, but just for understanding, a more normal approach to the way the mind works. And again, I hate using that. I want to dissect that a little bit more, but that is something that I wanted to provide some definitions, especially since I just use those terms, right? And some people might be like, I don't know what that means. Break it down for me. So back to this video and what this video really is. I am going to talk about the experience that I've had with learning about my mind and learning how my mind works, learning the perception that I have. And that really led me on this journey to go into my diagnosis with autism, with ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD, it's just a quick term, which is ASD, which is autism, and ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, where they work in tandem. And that in itself is a interesting perspective because they kind of work against each other, which is really interesting. But sometimes I'm really routine and I can't stray from my routine, which is more the autism side. But then the ADHD side is I need more stimulation. I need to get out of this routine, and I'm just going in 5 different ways, and then like mentally wears me out, and it's a whole thing. But yes, those are my diagnoses. My autism side is stronger, so I tend to have more of those traits. But trust me, sometimes I'd be acting crazy. I'm like, whoa, what is this? And that is more on the ADHD side, where I'm more like hyperactive. So my experience and what got me here and kind of things to look out for, it doesn't have to do with neurodivergence. It could just be somebody who wants to understand their mind a little bit more, and giving yourself the space to do that, because there can be so much misunderstanding to differences. And trust me, I am someone that falls into that category. I want to say this. In the last episode, there was something that I said: if you ever feel like you're feeling too much, you're feeling either internally you feel too much, or you're feeling like you are too much with other people. I want to break that down a little bit. What does that intensity mean? Because intensity without explanation is very, very overwhelming. This episode, it's about what life feels like before you have the words for it. If you just really want to understand your mind, and if you've ever felt overwhelmed by life itself, I want to try to help with that. to ask you the proper questions of why do I think this way? I truly believe that learning more about yourself gives you so much peace. I think a lot of times we look for peace externally. We look for it in relationships. We look for it in spirituality, religion, all of those things. They can help you find peace. But my perspective is finding the way you are designed and wired is what I truly believe gives you the most peace. And okay, super long intro. Oh my God, what am I doing? Okay. I divvied this up into different sections. And section one that I want to go into is what overstimulation feels like before the language. So from my perspective, before having language, it's so hard to really sit with what is actually happening in your body, especially when you're younger. When you're still developing in your teens, especially with social aspects, you're in school, kids are bullies, so much is happening. And what's really happening in your body is there are these intense nervous system responses that get misrepresented as personal failures. So I want to repeat that. Before you have language to really dissect what you're feeling something. And what you're feeling is neurological. Nerves translating this information to your brain. It doesn't have to be a body feeling. It could be a mental feeling. It's just a feeling. And your body is getting that system input. Think of your body like a computer. You're getting this input and it's a lot. And you're just, what is this? If you don't understand it, if you don't have the language. So a lot of times it gets misrepresented as something is wrong. Something is wrong with me. I'm a failure. What's going on? Which is why it is so easy to get lost in yourself. So some talking points I wanna get into is these feelings, how to properly identify them, why certain emotions hit harder and linger, environments that are draining you, and then the social aspect of being told, oh, it's anxiety, you're just sensitive, that's just how you are. What does that mean? I want to make it my job to help you discover what does that mean for yourself. So the very first thing is when you are feeling these intense emotions, the very first thing, and I know this is super generic, but really getting to a place of journaling. I look at it from this perspective. When there is a lot of information coming at you, it can easily be overwhelming, but journaling helps you get it out of here and put it into something. It could be a journal. If you write, I journal by voicing. I voice into an AI journal that helps me compartmentalize things, and that is something that I totally recommend, especially with the social nuance of talking about it with a friend, family member, and you're like, I don't want to always be the one that talks about things. Talk to something. Don't feel like it's weird. Should I cuss? I shouldn't cuss. Screw that. Screw it. You're doing things for yourself to become better, to grow, to understand yourself. And these are the things that I feel like we should learn in school, and I get passionate about it, but I digress. So the very first thing is journaling in some capacity. Yes, I know, easier said than done, because you have to build some sort of routine, especially people with neurodivergence, or get in the habit of doing that. But that is the very first thing, is before you make any decisions on certain reactions, especially when you are feeling so much, if it is possible, try to get it out of here and get it into something else, because then you have time to reflect. And when you have time to reflect, that's where the understanding comes in. If you are in hyperdrive, if there's all of this information going through, and this is what people mean when it's like, oh, you take a break, take 5 minutes, but like, what does that mean? That means regulate yourself. Regulate yourself means, okay, I am overstimulated, whatever you want to call it. Take time to really bring it down. And sometimes and this is where boundaries come in. It gets into emotional intelligence and things of that nature. Sometimes you might have to leave an event. Sometimes you might have to completely get yourself out of a situation. You might, again, easier said than done. This is not a black and white scenario, but as soon as you can get to a place where you're by yourself or in a place that is safe, comfortable, get it out of here. So once you get to that reflecting point and you really start dissecting, that's when it is super imperative to start using examples or this is why I love AI journals, because anytime you log, the AI does it for you. Oh, I reacted this way in this situation. I reacted this way in this situation, and you can talk back to it. Use ChatGPT, but really understanding whenever you're in certain scenarios, what gets you to that point. And you will quickly find out there is so much about yourself that you might not have understood. So for example, funny enough, I was in a fraternity in college. So weird to say that because I get so overstimulated by people. But in a time when I didn't understand that, it would show up as anxiety. It would show up as depression. It would show up essentially, even without those words, as this really, really heavy energy. And I did not know where it was coming from. And that's the scary thing. So I was always so active. I did all these things in the world, whenever you see things that, oh my God, you're in a fraternity, you work out, you do all these things. But then when your mind and your body's telling you like something is wrong, and that something wrong is that heavy energy of anxiety, of depression, of all of these things that you're just like, oh my God, blowing up. And I would have these outbursts and people would think I was crazy. People would be like, oh my God, he was literally fine 2 seconds ago. Why is he yelling at me about something stupid? It was never about that point. It was never about that specific situation. It's about the mountain that wasn't seen to get me to that point. But again, in this world, we all have to own and have accountability and say, what could I have done better? Regardless if someone pushed my buttons or anything like that, what could I have done better to not let that happen? And that's what started me on, not that exact situation, but things like that is what started me on this journey, why I've become so passionate about mental health in general. Because now looking back, oh my God, I was doing all of these things. I was going out, I was drinking, I was having a fun life, but that's what people saw. The fun, the face, the mask of fun. But they didn't see the days that it took me to recover, the mental breakdowns that I was having. Some people saw it sometimes, but they categorized it as like, that's just Michael. He's just too much. He's a little crazy, blah, blah, blah. And that was to me kind of like that pivotal moment of like, oh my gosh, now that I have the words for it, that's what was happening back then. I was just trucking along because society tells you, okay, like you can't talk about things, but my body and my mind were begging for help of like, stop putting me through this situation, which then goes all the way back to my first point. If I would have just known, and I think I did used to journal then, but again, the AI journal is like where it's at because it's just like, oh, it helps so much. But it's just truly understanding yourself. That's always the first step. Understanding who you are, what are your triggers, what that looks like, and you will be surprised. And that's what people mean by you're always learning more things about yourself. But I did want to do a quick pivot because I feel like this is important. So I use the word overstimulation a lot as well. So what does overstimulation actually mean? So I want to give the proper definition of that. So the definition that I pulled up is in psychology, overstimulation is a state where the brain receives more sensory or emotional input, parentheses, sights, sounds, thoughts, or demands, than it can process, leading to overwhelm, disorientation, and distress, often triggering the body's fight or flight response with symptoms like anxiety, irritability, difficulty focusing, and restlessness. And so again, in simple terms, overstimulation is basically your brain receiving more sensory or emotional input than it can process at that specific time or just in general, right? And again, you having the word for that, you can communicate that to others. And that's kind of where it starts. It's a journey. It's not going to be perfect the first time. Get yourself in that mindset of, I'm going to make mistakes, but at least I'm learning about myself, learning this language to help me get to a better point in my life. All right. So something I want to jump into as well is what people mean by feeling too much. What does that mean? So feeling too much, in my opinion, is, and this is hard to say because I've had my days. It's not a character flaw. It's about intensity and processing. Feeling too much, I always say, is a double-edged sword. Double edges meaning it's good and bad regardless of any way that you look at it. I've always been someone that feels things very strongly. When I say things, emotions, I'm very justice oriented. Things that I'll watch something on TV. And I remember when I was younger, oh my gosh, this was crazy. But I would see an injustice on TV, something societal, let's say, like a racial issue. And it would infuriate me. It would take over to the point to where it was hard to regulate. And this is where you start getting into neurodivergence because anyone can say, oh, I get like that. It's not that serious. Okay, first of all, pause. You don't know what I'm feeling, which goes into feeling too much. So that is something that I wish we would kind of, as a society, step back from. Because yes, from a neurological perspective, you can have a reaction to that emotionally, sure. But the level always depends on so much. There's so much gray there. there is overstimulation, there's trauma, there's past occurrences, there's sense of justice, there's so much. So just getting to a place of, okay, this person's having this reaction, maybe we can dissect now, later, however. Okay, so bring it back to whenever I was having these intense emotions, I didn't know that my brain did that. A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people are selfish, unintentionally, I like to think, but they live in their bubble. So they're like, I feel this way, why don't you feel that way? And that's something that I've never understood. Because, well, pause. No, I've done that. Because on the opposite side, I've always felt too much. So when people don't feel too much, I'm like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with me? What's going on? So there's that constant, again, it goes to that very first thing that I talked about. There's just this constant tugging of just the way we communicate. But if we were just more understanding, we would get it. So ultimately, sorry, I went on a tangent. The intensity and processing of feeling too much is essentially so gray because there is so much that could be contributing to that. It could be something like you're neurodivergent. It could be something like trauma is just spiking up. And this is why, again, I go back to truly understanding yourself. Because if you don't understand yourself, think about it from this perspective. Everything that we just talked about in the past 10 minutes, has it been? If you don't know yourself, or if you don't know that aspect of yourself, imagine how overstimulating that is. Just take a moment to be like, God, and just imagine and think about it from the perspective of mental health and psychology. A lot of people don't understand mental health. They just push it off like it's not that serious because I can't see it. And then think about it from a worldly view, from a societal view. Homelessness. Imagine how many of those people get to that point because of mental health issues, whether it be neurodivergence or just depression or whatever it is. And it stems from not understanding yourself. I really believe that. Because if you understand, or at least are on some level of understanding the way your mind works, you can do so much to prep you for this crazy hell called life. Roller coaster. That's the thing about this podcasting too. It's so funny. I get really overstimulated by talking a lot. And I talk a lot. Yeah, I talk a lot. Yeah. and I overwhelm myself. So after this episode, I'm just going to probably lay on the couch and die. But it's all because of me. It's funny. I'm like my own problem. Haha. Okay. Whew. So, again, feeling too much. Be nice to yourself because the world will not be nice to you. Or you can't expect for the world to be nice to you. And when I say the world, I'm speaking very generally. What I mean by that is people who don't understand the way that you work. A great example is me and my mom. My mom is one of my best friends. I love her so much. We are so similar. But it's so funny because I actually discovered this a few months ago. And it's weird because the mind works like this. It's like when you're in a bad relationship and you kind of know you're in a bad relationship, but you're like, oh my gosh, everything's fine. And then when you're out of it, you're like, what was I doing? You have that realization. I want to find a word for that because that epiphany, I guess. But it's so weird because I've always known this about my mom, but now I have the words to describe it. Me and my mom are literally the same. Our brains are literally the same. And it's so funny. What I mean, we both feel hella. We both feel so much. We both get very overwhelmed by things in communication. And there's always been this shared experience that has drawn us to each other. She calls me her like little therapist because she can talk about deep things like that. With my other siblings, she can't do that because they're going to be like, Mom, you're doing too much. Or they're just not going to understand. But since her and I are like on the same wavelength, same page, and our minds think the same, what I'm trying to get around with this is that the world comes with people like me and my mom where we understand each other, but most people won't understand. Creating your safe space and getting to a place of comfortability, if that's even a word, or safe space with people who understand you, or again, go back to journaling. It's just learning yourself. The caveat to that is you're also an adult, so it's your responsibility to learn about yourself and hold yourself accountable. It's so nuanced, but this is why I'm so excited about this podcast so that I can break it down. But that's a whole topic on its own that we just need to move on to the next. Something I want to talk about as well is why just get over it doesn't work. And I think I kind of explained that. So when someone says like, calm down, don't take it personally. For example, if someone was to tell me calm down, I'd be like, okay, am I being too much or are you not being enough? So those are two things that can make me mad. lack of understanding, and just almost feeling judged. Your experience of how you live this world is so different from someone else's. So be mindful about that. And telling someone who feels a lot to calm down or just get over it, everyone feels like that, it doesn't work because we can't just turn it off. I get the intent, but what I need for us to understand is we have different minds, and it's not that easy for us. Trust me, for neurodivergent people. So saying something like "get over it," it assumes that you have full control over what you're feeling. Again, neurotypical people might. Someone who's not in a depressive state might, but you don't know what that person's going through. So just assuming that that person has full control over that intensity is tough, because that could feel like moving mountains to them, and I know what that feels like. It ignores physiology. Physiology is the state of your body. And so when your mind is, oh my gosh, someone's saying it's not that serious, but literally my body is screaming at me, my mind is screaming at me, and then it goes into, oh, do I ignore that? What's going on? And then you start to feel quote unquote crazy. And then it treats overwhelm as a mindset issue. Again, this goes almost to the first point of, okay, what you're going through physiologically, I think I said that right. Someone is saying you have full control over that, which you can get there, but most of the world doesn't. And now you're thinking, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. Now it's a me thing. It's a mindset thing. And it's just a whole jumble of mess. So a lot of the time, especially with people who are neurodivergent, you can't logic your way out of a nervous system that's already overwhelmed. And this is where it goes to, again, the first point of the journaling, getting yourself out of those situations, truly working on understanding your mind, because it helps. Okay, we've talked a lot. I've talked a lot. I'm getting tired. I'm getting overstimulated. I'm getting like, ugh. So I think I am going to cut it short, because there are some more things, but there are other episodes for that, and I need to be real to myself, true to myself on how I need to process this, because this is my thing. This is my baby. And I want to be real about it too, because I want people to see really what I go through. It's called the Unmasked Self. It's taking the mask off of, okay, on society, I could present this way. I struggle with that too, because a lot of times I feel like I am the same wherever I go, and that could be a problem, or I've been told it's a problem multiple times. But I'm like, screw it. That's who I am. But I also want to have a realism component to this podcast. I want it to feel like you're having a conversation with me. But yeah, I want to stop there and just summarize. The whole point of this episode was to truly dissect understanding yourself, really, and getting to a place of regulation. So regulated, what I mean by that is getting to a place of where your mind, your physiology, your body is in a neutral state. Not necessarily calm, but neutral state to where you're not heightened by overstimulation, by an emotion. That to me is regulation. So truly understanding yourself to get to a regulated state more easily, and also what to do to prep yourself for when you're out of that regulated state. It all comes with understanding yourself and who you are and how you deal with certain situations. The other thing is introducing language. Language is so important. I'm very big on finding the proper definitions to be like, hold on. This happens to me all the time, and I feel like this is where people think autistic people are problematic or argumentative, because when someone uses a word and I'm like, it's not the proper use of that word, but then sometimes I'm corrected when I'm like, oh, maybe I'm using it wrong and that's embarrassing. But again, getting on the same page of words matter. They really do. And oh my gosh, let me share this with you. This was such an impactful video. I'll link it if I can find it. But it's Selma Hayek, I believe, of all people. She was being interviewed, and I don't know the context of it. But essentially, she said, if someone was to yell at me in a language that I didn't understand, if someone was to say something rude to me, getting to a state where you are not reactive is very, very hard, because those words matter. Those words are hitting different aspects of you. But think about it from, let's just say, Cantonese. I don't know Cantonese. If someone was yelling at me saying the same things that person A said in English, it wouldn't impact me because I don't understand it. You're literally just making noise at that point. So how do you get to a place where the language you understand is making noise when it doesn't work for you? It all goes to the whole point that I'm trying to make of words matter, definitions matter, understanding matters. And that was just such a deep thing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about that. And it's so interesting. So yeah, I just want to leave you with this. Before language, there's something called confusion. With language, there's something called understanding. And the next step to understand is nuance. We're working on getting the proper language to avoid confusion, gain understanding, and learn nuance. And what is nuance? The gray area. It's not black and white. As much as I wish this world was black and white, because my brain is so black and white, there's so much nuance, there's so much gray, there's so many different things that happen. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Again, that double-edged sword. I don't know why I keep doing that. Double-edged sword. But yeah, I really, really hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope someone's watching it. Imagine if I put this out and like no one's watching it. But at least it's, for me to have therapy, that whole thing. Okay. I will see myself because I don't see you guys, but see you guys in the next episode. All right. Take care. Peace out.